Welcome back to Historic Investments. Today we've got something a little bit different for you. We just purchased a collection of Whitney Wolverines. Many of you are familiar with this gun. Super cool, very futuristic. Let's open the box and see what we've got. This is really a super opportunity to look at a nice grouping of Whitney Wolverines reflecting a number of changes throughout its production. We've got a couple of really early production guns, both in the 100,000 serial range. We've got a presentation pistol. This one is serial number 27. We've got then three kind of mid-production guns going from 24,000 to about 31,000. We've got one of the very sought-after all-nickeled pistols. We've got one that's nickeled with some engraving, and then we've got an example right near the end of production, almost at 37,000. So with that in mind, why don't we take a look at some of these guns individually? Robert Hillberg always considered the first guns to be the best of the Whitney Wolverines. They were made of the toughest aluminum alloy, which is number 218, and as you may or may not be aware, serial numbering started at 1001. The vast majority looked just like these two examples. They had a blackened finish. The aluminum tube that's used to shroud the barrel was marked Whitney on the left side, and on the right side it was trademarked Wolverine, along with the address Whitney Firearms Inc. in New Haven, Connecticut. The guns were fitted with these somewhat mottled brown plastic panels and a butt release magazine that was easily disassembled, and the magazine was actually remarkable in a number of other respects. It had a little bit of a tapered construction, which was narrower near the top than in the bottom to allow easier feeding, and actually a slightly better cartridge alignment. And instead of a follower button, there was a hole here so that you could slip in a 22 case and use the 22 case to help depress the follower. On the left side of the magazine wall, you can see a number of indicator lines for the cartridges, along with numeric markings for 5 and 10 shot capacity. About 1,000 of these guns were made in that serial range, beginning with 100,001, after which the serial range started at 23,000. But let me also add that during that time, Hillberg also made a small number of presentation pistols, estimated at less than 50 guns. Let's take a look at number 27. If you're a collector like me, you not only are looking for the best original finish guns, but you also prefer guns with low serial numbers and low or early and interesting developmental features. Well, Robert Hillberg was well aware of that fact, and for special customers and collectors, he had a separate series of guns that were numbered between 1 and presumably 50. The guns were all marked actually similarly to those that we previously reviewed. For example, this one, which is serial number 27, you can see that the left side of the barrel shroud is marked Whitney, but look at this. Here's the right side of the barrel shroud. There is no Wolverine. The address is otherwise the same, Whitney Firearms Inc., New Haven, Connecticut. It's got the same kind of grips and the same kind of magazine. And look at here. Here it is. Serial number 27. So, since there was no since there was no Wolverine marking on the barrel shroud, was this just an oversight within the first 2,000 guns, or was this completed after the first 2,000 pistols were already assembled? We don't know, but if we had to speculate, maybe this was a later assembled pistol. After the first 1,000 guns, Hillberg made a number of changes. Probably the most significant was to change the metallurgy. Instead of using the 218 aluminum, he had decided to switch to the much less durable but equally effective 380 aluminum. Actually, the real reason for the change was that the 380 was a lot cheaper, but as long as it didn't impair the lifespan of the pistol, who cares? The idea was to make these as cheaply and as reliably as possible. The guns were otherwise marked as per that number 27 that we just reviewed, with Whitney on the left side of the barrel shroud, no Wolverine, and the address in New Haven, Connecticut on the right side. Same kind of grips and the same kind of magazine. Let's talk for a moment about the nickeled guns that have assumed a nearly holy grail status for many of the Whitney collectors. If you want to really be sure about your nickeled gun, it should be in a very discrete serial range, basically between 32,500, here it says of course 32,546, and 33,000. Are there a few overruns after 33,000? Yes, but only 88 out of the next 1,000 guns. So Really, to be sure, you want the gun 32,500 to 33,000. If you can't remember, let me just give you a couple of clues. Okay, this is a gun right in the middle of the nickeled range. You can see that the barrel shroud is nickeled, the frame is nickeled, the cocking knob is nickeled, the safety is nickeled, the hammer is nickeled, the sight is polished bright or nickeled, the grips are usually white. Interestingly, the grip screw is not nickeled, it's blued. The trigger, most Whitneys have got a silver trigger or chrome trigger. These have got a slightly gold tint to them. And look at the floor plate of the magazine. The floor plate is not blued, the floor plate is nickeled. However, if you look at the rest of the magazine, it's kind of got a standard magazine body. So the gun is fully nickeled, including the floor plate, but again, not including the grip screws, and the guns should have white grips. What about those outliers? Well, let's talk about the outliers for a second. What about engraved Whitney Wolverines? We've got one here. Is it factory, not factory? How can you tell? What are you going to be basing your insights on? Well, in this case, the barrel shroud is nickeled, so that's a very good sign. How can you tell it's nickeled and not polished? Well, if you look really, really closely in a couple of areas, like right around the sight and right around this part, if you can see it right around this part of the very shallow rib, you can see where the nickel finish is flaked off. So it's not polished. This is nickeled. Well, what about the rest of the frame? What about the cocking knob? What about the hammer? Well, what about the trigger? Is it lightly strawed or kind of a yellow golden colored? No, it's not. Well, these should all be called into question. Again, to compare, let me pull back the fully nickeled gun, and maybe you can see the two right there. Let's take a look even at the front strap. Now with the two guns next to each other, hopefully you guys can see the difference. In my right hand, we've got a fully nickeled gun. In the left hand, we've got kind of a satin finished frame. It is absolutely not fully nickeled. What about the magazine base? I don't know, hopefully you can make that out. In the right hand is a fully nickeled magazine base. On my left hand right here, that's engraved. It's more of a satin matte finished magazine base. So you have to ask the question, well, is this a kind of a factory special order? Maybe it was sent out. You know, why does it have a fully nickeled barrel shroud? Well, I don't think we'll ever know that. It's a very attractive gun. It's got the correct finish for the barrel shroud. It certainly has the correct grips. It's got the blued grip screws. Well, of course, all Whitneys have got blued grip screws, but it doesn't have the nickeling that we would associate with a fully nickeled gun. So this is a gun where you'd have to scratch your head a little bit and kind of go on your gut instincts. And sometimes you just say, well, the heck with it. I don't even care if it's factory engraved because I think it's a really attractive gun. According to Tagliente, standard production guns ended with serial number 36,857. This gun is about 200 guns from the end, and it's got a number of interesting markings. One of the things that you might already see just even from that view is looking at the P here on the left side of the trigger guard web. That was that's an assembly marker, and some of the assemblers at that time were actually people from Colt who wanted to make a few extra bucks and work overtime for Whitney. The other thing that you might see is there was a change in the address. Maybe if we could actually focus in a little bit more here, you can see here where the Wolverine marking was previously, we now see caliber 22 LR patent pending. The other thing that you've seen is, or maybe seeing hopefully, is it says instead of the Whitney Firearms Inc., it now says Whitney Firearms Company, and instead of the other address here, I'll show you just by comparison, instead of the New Haven address, it now says Hartford, Connecticut. So a couple of little markings on this gun near the end of production that if you're a collector, you might want to say that's a little bit different. I'd like an example, but otherwise, in terms of the mechanics, this pistol is identical to the other examples that we've reviewed in the video. And just to, again, emphasize all the Whitney Wolverine pistols, whether or not they're marked Wolverine, regardless of the aluminum tensile strength, they're all marked on the front strap. This gun is serial number 36636, and again, it's within 200 numbers or so of the end of production. Well, thank you once again for having joined us at Historic Investments. Hopefully you enjoyed this overview of the Whitney Wolverine. There's certainly a lot of variations here. If you want to delve into the subject more fully, I couldn't recommend more strongly the Whitney Wolverine book by Tagliente. But in any event, thank you. That's all for today, and good collecting.